Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Welcome to another edition of The Angry Doctor. I'm Joel Keenan, an internist in Southern Maine. Have you ever gotten out of the shower and looked in the mirror and said, "Oh my God, what happened?" Has that happened to you? It happened to me a couple of months ago. Don't worry, I won't show you any photos. But if you Google axial fat deposition, you'll see what I'm talking about. And I know I'm not alone. 3/4 of us are overweight. 40% of us are obese in the United States, and it's a new problem. In 1900, the obesity rate among adults was 3%. In 1960, it was about 13%, and then over the next 40 years, the rate tripled to where we are today. So this all happened in our lifetime. And as you know, there are a lot of theories for what's gone wrong, what's the cause of all this. From on one end of the spectrum, people say, well, this is a genetic problem. If you have certain genes, you are destined to be obese. And on the other end of the spectrum, people say that has nothing to do with it. It's calories in, calories out. And if you're overweight, it's your fault. You've just got to cut back on your meal portions. And both ideas are wrong. That's not the problem. Genetics does not determine obesity. It's related to it, but it's not what causes obesity. And what makes us overweight and obese is far more complicated than just how many calories we consume in a day. That is not the root of the problem at all. The real problem is we stopped eating food. That's what happened in our lifetime. 60 million years ago, when primates began their history, until today, for all those 60 million years, our primate ancestors ate fruit and vegetables. That's what they do for a living. They eat plants. 7 million years ago, when hominins diverged from primates, we human precursors ate plants. And then as we developed tools and the capacity to control fire about 2 million years ago, we started hunting and eating animals, and we became omnivores. And for all 300,000 years of our Homo sapien history, we ate plants and animals. That was our diet. That's all there was to it, in some proportion depending on where we lived. Most of that time we lived in Africa, where plants are abundant. So that was a big part of our diet. And that all changed in the lives of our great-grandparents when Kellogg's Corn Flakes came onto the scene in 1895. And since then, we've been eating alternatives to food. Ritz crackers and Entenmann's and Breyer's ice cream, apple juice. These things are not food. They are manufactured from food. And it's not this processed and ultra-processed food that consists of over 60% of the modern American diet. This isn't a technical or an academic distinction. It's a fundamental difference in how our body metabolizes those calories. And the basic problem is there's more to it than just this, but a big part of it is the caloric density of our food has changed, and our bodies are just overwhelmed, producing far more glucose than we can handle at any one time. And that's ironic because, you know, from a biological perspective, the project of life for all living beings, plants and animals, all of us, is to make this molecule, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. This is the currency of energy. All the energy that we spend, you and I, to be alive, for everything we do, from moving to feeling happy or sad, requires ATP, and a ton of it. We have about 86 billion neurons in our brain. The most active of those are in the cerebral cortex. There are about 16 billion of those. And every one of those 16 billion neurons, each second uses over 4.5 billion molecules of ATP. That's how much we spend. That's how much energy we spend every second we're alive. It's staggering. It's unbelievable. And of course, all that energy has to come from food. And our bodies prefer one type of food above all other to make that ATP. Sugar, glucose, a simple monosaccharide, the simplest. That, above all, is what our bodies want to use to make that indispensable fuel, that currency of energy, ATP. Because glucose is far more efficient than any other substrate or source of fuel. Fats, protein, alcohol. Those are the other potential sources of fuel that we can eat. It's far more effective and efficient, breaking down to that essential substrate that enters the Krebs cycle, acetyl coenzyme A, to produce the NADH and the other molecules that wind up going into the electron transport chain that wind up producing that crucial molecule, ATP. So, you would think, just knowing that carbohydrates, of which glucose is one, are good for us, and they are. And you might think eating a lot of carbohydrates is good for us, and it is. But it's crucial that we understand that the carbohydrates our species grew up eating, that we evolved to eat, are not the ultra-processed carbohydrates that you and I have eaten all our lives. Those Ritz crackers and the baked goods and the processed food and the refined bread. None of that is what humans were designed to eat. And it's all we've eaten. We're like frogs, you and I, in a pot of boiling water. We have no context. This is all we've known all our lives. And it's making us sicker and sicker, and we're dying because of the food we're eating. That's the problem. It's not genetics, and it's not just calories in, calories out, because the kind of calories you eat matters much more than how many calories you eat. The difference between apple juice and apples is a good example. It's not just that the apple juice has more calories per gram, which it does. It's the form of the food is completely different, and therefore we metabolize it much faster. A lot easier to drink a glass of apple juice than it is to eat an apple. It's less time consuming. It's more efficient getting those calories in. And our bodies react to that difference. French fries versus potatoes is another example of the same kind of problem with processed food. So, for us, eating this calorie-dense, ultra-processed food, the hormone whose job it is to mediate that problem gets overwhelmed, and that's insulin. Insulin, as you know, is a fed state hormone. It's part of the rest and digest phase in human metabolism. And insulin is a crucial, indispensable hormone, does all kinds of good things for us. It helps make amino acids, convert them into protein. It takes glucose in excess and turns it into fat for storage. And it acts as a doorman, letting glucose out of the bloodstream into the cells where it can go into the mitochondria and form ATP. Insulin does all of that. And it does it really well. And it works beautifully until it's overwhelmed. And our surges of glucose increase because of the density of the food we're eating, the processed food we're eating. And then insulin over time becomes less and less effective. The receptors to which insulin binds to let glucose into the cells become resistant. And insulin levels increase. And eventually insulin fails to do its job, and that's when glucose levels increase and we become diabetic. And all along the way before we become diabetic, we get overweight and obese and all the things that come from that: hypertension, sleep apnea, arthritis, depression, cancer in some cases, you name it. It's a train wreck that we're all living with day after day. And there was a great study done in 2019. One of the big problems with nutritional studies is they're almost all observational, because you can't you can't take one group of people at random and say, okay, now you eat this for 10 years, and another group and say, you don't eat this for 10 years, and we're going to see what happens to each of you. People don't live that way. They won't cooperate. They can't cooperate. It's too big of an ask. That's the problem with observational studies. They can show a connection between things, but not that one thing causes another. And what we want to establish, what we would like to be able to prove, what I would like to be able to show is that eating this processed food causes overweight and obesity, and not eating this processed food, eating unprocessed food, does the opposite. It maintains a healthy weight or even helps you lose weight without dieting. There was a study done in 2019 that showed exactly that. They took 20 people and put them in an inpatient facility so they could control everything. And then they randomized those people to two groups. One ate highly processed food for 2 weeks and the other ate unprocessed food for 2 weeks. And this was called a crossover study because after those 2 weeks, those two cohorts switched and did exactly the opposite of what they had done for the first 2 weeks. And that study was able to show that eating highly processed food causes overweight and eating unprocessed food doesn't. And for the two groups, the meals were identical in their composition of protein, fat, carbohydrates, calories, and fiber and sugar. They were the same, but one meal was processed and the other was unprocessed. And the other interesting thing about this study was they said, okay, listen, just like in the real world, you can eat as much as you want. And people did. And what they found was the people eating the highly processed food ate much more, 500 calories a day more than the people eating unprocessed food. And that was part of what made a big difference. There were other differences too in the rate at which processed food is metabolized, the caloric density, etc. But it was a really excellent study in showing really what you and I are contending with. Those aisles 2 through 12 in the grocery store, the vast majority of what you and I shop for at Hannaford or Market Basket or Whole Foods or wherever is terrible for us. It's not real food. It's not good for us. It's not what we should be eating. It's not what our ancestors ate. And it's the reason we have all kinds of problems that they never had. So, that's really our task, yours and mine, is to avoid processed food. And that's difficult to do because, for one thing, there's not a bright line distinction between them. But you get the idea. Fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, and legumes, those are unprocessed foods. Animal food is unprocessed as well in many cases, but that's what unprocessed food looks like. And their gray areas is whole wheat bread, processed or unprocessed, a little of both, right? And that's why what I want to suggest to you that you try is going to be useful, because you can see, using the device I'm going to describe for you, what effect the food you're eating is really having for you. And this is really worth doing. It's called a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, that I'll describe for you in a minute. But it's really worth checking, because one thing we know is that people are terrible at describing what they're really eating. And that's true for two reasons. One is people don't tell the truth. They just don't. We're humans. And, if I had 4 donuts for breakfast, I'm probably going to tell you I had 2 or 1 or maybe none. That's just the way it is. And 2, as well as an inclination to deceive other people out of the interest of, just making ourselves look a little healthier than we might actually be. We lie to ourselves. We don't tell the truth to ourselves about what we're eating. And, you might think, well, yeah, I eat vegetables for dinner every night, and there's a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and you got half a dozen green beans there as well, right? You got your protein, your carbs, and your greens right there. Right there it is. You're eating vegetables, right? Well, no, you're not. are you? I mean, half a dozen green beans, that's not worth much. It's a trivial part of your diet. And in fact, what's the percentage as a matter of calories that consist of fruit and vegetables for Americans? 10%. In 1970, it was 10%. That's when the government, the USDA, said, hey, everybody eat more fruit and vegetables. We notice you're not doing that. It's going to be a problem. And we all said, okay, Roger, 10-4. And 40 years later, what was the percent of our diet that was fruit and vegetables? 10%. What is it today? 10%. We don't do it. We just don't. You can get this device. It's called a Lingo, continuous glucose monitor. You can get it at Walgreens, Rite Aid, Walmart, CVS, what have you. You can get it online as well. And it costs $50 or $60. And it's a sensor that you just attach it to your arm. There are very simple instructions to do that, nothing complicated. And you'll pair that sensor with your Android cell phone or your iPhone. And it will give you a continuous, ongoing reading of what your blood glucose is. And it responds right away to whatever you eat or don't eat. And it's just really valuable information. And you can see, oh, wow, when I eat this food, my sugar is spiking over 140 where we don't want it. You know, you want your fasting glucose certainly below 100, ideally below 90. You want your postprandial glucose, the glucose level that occurs after you eat, certainly below 140, ideally below 120. Those are the kinds of numbers you're looking for. And you can see using this device, hey, how's my body responding to this food? Whether it's unprocessed or semi-processed or ultra-processed, what's happening here? Do I have a problem? And it gives you instant feedback. It's really great. I put that on, after that event when I got out of the shower one day and thought, I got to do something because this is getting out of hand. And it gave me really useful information. Among other things, it showed me by trial and error that if I start my dinner by eating greens, lots and lots of vegetables, and then I get to mashed potatoes or fish or whatever else I'm going to eat for dinner, I don't get the same kind of glucose spike that I would otherwise, eating the same food but in a different order. It shows me that. And obviously it showed me some things that, bread, which I'm very fond of, my glucose tends to spike, and yours may not. We're all different, and you'll have a different response to some foods than someone else will. But it's really useful information. I read a book called Burn a few weeks ago, and just speaking of ways to modify our weight without dieting, which is never a good idea. As soon as you diet, your metabolic rate plummets. The way to lose weight is above all to eat healthy food. And I had thought as well, certainly exercise has got to be very helpful. In the thesis of this guy's book, he's a evolutionary anthropologist or biologist. Great book, really interesting. He's one of these guys who lived with Hadza hunter-gatherers in Africa and just followed them around for months and months and months and was able to really accurately quantify their caloric expenditures, how many calories they're burning with exercise, being very active as hunter-gatherers are, walking or jogging several miles a day. And depressingly, what he found is their caloric expenditure isn't much greater than ours, yours and mine. Incredible. But what he found, and he's got good evidence to support it, is we humans are very good at conserving energy. So if we do something really aerobic, in other respects that day, we'll decrease our energy expenditure, like on inflammation or digestion or what have you. But his point was to say, not that exercise isn't good for us. It is. It definitely is. Exercise is indispensable. The more the better. Vigorous exercise is great in particular. Resistance exercise is really valuable for a number of reasons. What it's not particularly good at is producing weight loss. That doesn't mean don't do it. Do it. But I think one of the inferences I took from that book is it just returns us to what is for you and me the heart of the problem, and that is the quality of the food we're eating. It's just not good. And again, that's hard to recognize because nobody in the grocery store is saying, here, buy this crap and buy that junk and buy this garbage. It's all packaged to, sound healthy, look healthy, seem healthy, and it's not healthy. And that's the task you and I are faced with, navigating that minefield. This Lingo CGM, continuous glucose monitor, is a great tool in assessing for yourself, what's your diet doing? How's your body handling it? And I hope you'll take a look and check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.